everyone, it's Kelly here, and today in our lesson I'm going to be showing you how to paint this red pear 4 different ways. So we've had some questions about how do you design a still life, how do you treat backgrounds, and so of course there's so many different ideas, visual ideas that you can come up with. So I'm going to go over a few of them, and of course this can be applied to any subject matter or genre. Once again, we will be also referring to our handy dandy color wheel. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, everybody. All right, so since I'm doing 4 of these, I got to work pretty fast, so do not expect them to look all that refined, of course, and please take your own time with it, as much time as you want. Mostly I just want to present these different ideas to you because there may be one that you just really, 1 or 2 that you've never tried before, and you find out that you really love the idea. So the first concept is just, of course, a traditional light against dark, or what is sometimes referred to as Chiaroscuro painting. So where the foreground material is a lighter value against a darker neutral background. Okay. And you may have heard me mention this before, but you want to look at your foreground material. Even if you have a really dark object, really look at your foreground material and find something in the foreground that looks like it's darker in value than the background, because oftentimes even against a black backdrop like this, or a really dark shadowy backdrop, whatever is in front, there's usually something. So in this case, like this dark of the stem, and I would say even like the cast shadow underneath here, the very underneath cast shadow goes darker. So, and I'm just mixing up like a deep red for the shadow side with the cad red light, ivory black, and alizarin crimson. And then what I see is that really the background goes lighter, a little bit lighter than the value of the shadow. And once again, this is our one of those light reversals that we're always on the hunt for. So I could just put in a little more air and light back there. Okay. And then of course we want to get more light on the pear. So red is kind of a tricky color because it's middle of the value scale already. So how to lighten it without it going totally pink, what you will have to do is, you do have to add white to it, but you also want to add something that's up the scale, so to speak. So, and this is kind of a violet red anyhow on this particular pear, but let's say if you had like a really bright red apple or something, you may want to start going more to the red orange, or even to the not quite totally orange family, but a little more orange in that case. Then I have cool light, which I could use some of my background color, which has some of that ivory black in it, to really get the highlight on there. Okay, and then of course you can gradate your light, as I was showing you in the form video with the orange. So as this part of the belly of the pear is turning under, I can start to add a little bit warmer red and drop the value a little bit darker. It's all in how you do that. It's small steps at a time so that you don't destroy the form. You can even start to look at, like, there's a little bit of backlight behind the stem here, and that really helps to frame out the stem. Use the side of your brush to carve it. And again, we're using that flat parallel brush stroke, right? So that we are putting down flat pieces of paint that aren't super goopy, but are thicker paint quality. And then however much you want to carve out that edge in shape. So since we don't have just a ton of time, of course, our 5 minutes on this, my 5 minutes on demonstrating this kind of concept on this particular pear is up. It's amazing. Okay. And then of course with chiaroscuro painting too, well, really any kind of painting, you want to look for any kind of atmosphere that you could put in. I usually use whatever that background color is. And there is one little piece of light that I did not get in that is pretty crucial, and that is the tip of the stem, which, you know, becomes a light in front of the dark of the background. With your brush strokes too, do try to go across the form and even try to perhaps describe changes in the form by changing direction of your brush stroke. Okay, so that's it for this particular pear. So let's move on to the next idea. Alrighty, so in this case we are going to do, let me clean some of this up, we're going to do the exact opposite. We're going to do dark against a light background. How would you handle this with a lighter background on the pear? So some people might call this could be called high key, but basically we're just doing color and a darker value against a really light background. So really the same concepts apply. You're looking for, you know, your darkest accents. I just kind of masked the whole thing in with a deep red, and then adding a deeper and slightly more opaque, that's just the alizarin crimson there that I started with. So adding some cad red light and some alizarin crimson to that. Now, once again, which we could have a whole video just on reds, because they are a challenging color to get to look lit up, because they are, you know, kind of darker and they're so vivid. So, all right, so the same ideas still apply. I still need opacity in the light, and I still want to look for where my lightest part of the object is. It's just that in this case, you know, I have a really super light background, so that just makes the object, you know, it's the same exact object as what we used earlier, so in the last one. So this is really a good way to learn that, you know, painting is all about relationships, and one thing can really change its appearance depending on what you pose it against. Okay, and you can do the same thing, you know, build up a gradation of light on this pear, you know, and again, going back to our form lesson, concentrating more attention to detail and more descriptive brush strokes, in the center of the form. Again, you can use just a stroke to show, you know, there's sort of the belly coming out there. And all that really was an edge change. Let's see, all my brushes are kind of dirtied up now, but so in this case, you know, I would probably go to an alizarin, a titanium white, because I know that I really need a white that's going to dry really, really white in this case. Okay. And that background is a little bit warmer than the cloth that it's sitting on. So I might just add a little bit of color, you know, a little bit of my sort of my shadow muck mixture there, plus a little bit of Naples yellow. And I can start to also carve out the stem a little more refined. You know, and I'll say too that work going from alizarin to white is probably the most challenging, especially wet into wet, because if you drag any of that into the alizarin, it's just going to go straight up pink on you, and we don't want that. All right, so then I'm already out of that. So then I need to kind of wipe my brush and see if I can get sort of a cooler, just a smallest touch of Prussian to just get it a little bit icier, especially in front here. And you can use more brush strokes, of course, around your focal point or your star of the show, or on objects that are, you know, closer to us in the picture. So again, you know, smoother strokes are going to recede to the eye, and thicker, more expressive strokes are going to come forward. So then just adding a little more ivory black in there. And I just need to make sort of a shadow mixture here for the shadow on white cloth, and just a reminder that I typically use that ivory black and Naples yellow. Perhaps we'll just leave a little bit of that underpainting in there as a nice glow. You can actually pull paint off to be your reflected light if you wish, or you can, of course, paint in your reflected light. And you know, there's a little green spot that's in the shadow side, so that's not really reflected light, so be a little cautious of that. You've got to make sure that what you're painting is not just some sort of oddity in the object, you know. So okay, of course there's more that you can do there, get more detail, fine-tune the edges, or whatnot, but just wanted to give you an example of that concept, and just to see, you know, how different they are from one another. Alrighty, so let's go to the next one. Okay, so on the next one that we're doing, we're going to do complementary colors. So, you know, if you are saying, well, this is red, and so on your color wheel, the complementary color, of course, would be green. What I'm going to do is more of a violet red, since this red pear is a little more toned down than that, and do a split complementary, a little bit of green yellow in the leaves, and then more of green in the background. Now, you don't have to do, of course, pure color. You don't want like all of that pure color. So I'm going to really desaturate the green in the background, and probably go a little bit darker than what I only have so many cloths. So anyhow, but that is the idea, is the complementary color. And keep in mind, if you don't want to do straight complementary, the split complementary is a really great way to handle that. So I think the first thing I want to do is establish my most pure color, which I think in this case I'm going to, of course, make the pear. Remember that generally you want your background to recede, so you want your foreground subject matter to have more of the visual interest. And so since we are attracted to color and light more than, say, neutral tones and shadows, I'm going to first start with a lot of this color on the pear itself in that red. Just kind of drag those edges together for this particular exercise. And you notice too, I didn't really draw the pear the same way twice. You know, it's kind of fun actually to not do that. And also just to get in the habit of, you know, freeing yourself from feeling like you have to be too exact about, you know, what you're seeing. I think especially with still life, sometimes, you know, it's just a fine line. You know, you can get too specific to that particular fruit or flower that you have, and also you can get too, if you're not studying too closely, you can also get kind of what am I trying to say? Too cartoony, you know, or too yeah, where it looks too idealized or it looks too cartoony or something. Okay, so I am going to mix up a green for that background. And I have put some of the red in there, which will kind of cancel out some of the green. And then actually, I think instead of putting, since I don't really have room to do the leaves, you guys are welcome to do the leaves because they add a nice color. I think I'm going to start pulling in some of the yellow green more like in the tabletop plane and in the background behind the pear, since that's, you know, going to go a little bit lighter. And then maybe take this side more dark against light, perhaps. You always want to try to marry your colors, especially if you're working with a lot of different colors. And in this case, with the complementary color, you definitely want to try to find ways to connect them and combine them. And learning to carve out with your brush is also a big skill set to gain, you know, learning to draw with the paint rather than feeling like you have to get in around all those little spaces just so, you know, that can really get to be maddening. So start to learn how would I pop out that edge using my brush and using the paint that's around it, rather than, you know, yeah, trying to like get a little tiny brush and like work your way around the thing. So again, here, if things are starting to look outlined, go ahead and lose the edge and then come back and get it again here in a minute. I'm going to put some of that yellow green down here on the tabletop plane. Who's to say that The tabletop plane is not that color. So just to try to illustrate, what would you do if you were trying to go for a complementary color scheme, but maybe not everything was present there for you. You could even try to start putting in some of the yellow green on the pear itself and kind of blend it in to some extent. And trying to come back and get that edge again. Now, if your transition color is starting to look kind of, let's say, bruised like that, then you know that the temperature was a little too cold or a little too warm. Something about how it mixed in with the other color just, was kind of off. So in this case, I think probably needing to warm it up a little bit, maybe just had too much black or too much blue in it. You always, if you paint over your highlight, always try to come back and reinforce it later on, because you do want the brightest highlight to really be sitting on top of the paint that's underneath it. I don't know, just wondering if I can go a little more yellow green in the tabletop plane, and perhaps, yeah, I kind of like that. Just a little bit of this cooler lemony yellow, and maybe put some more white in there. Yeah, to sort of brighten that up. Kind of pull in that yellow green color a little bit stronger for this concept. Okay, let's go to the final one. Okay, so the final idea or compositional idea I'm going to show you is analogous color scheme. So what that means is basically any colors that have that red influence. So anything from, say, red violet to orange or yellow orange, because orange still has red in it. So anything from these, they have to have some color in common. So on this one, since I do have more of the violet reds in the shadows, more of the red in the pear, then I'm going to do the background and the tabletop plane more in these warmer tones. So it might be some of these darker desaturated tones here, more in the orange family. Okay. And then, yeah, hopefully these will give you some new ideas of how to approach a painting and just new things to try in your painting. All right. So, automatically this burnt umber already has a little bit of warmth into it, but I think I'm going to add some red oxide and some cad yellow deep just to get it a little bit hotter back there. I can always neutralize this at some point if I want to. And I do have to say, sometimes I find the analogous color schemes just so beautiful. There's just already such a harmony to them, because they all have a temperature or a color, a singular hue in common. So, and they can also tend to have a very sort of relaxing, serene feel to them because of that harmony. So then let's say in the stem and in parts of the shadow here, I'm going to go ahead and try to get the drawing of that cast shadow and how it meets up with the form shadow, because that is darker the shadow edge is darker against lighter the background, and that can go a little bit lighter, but so we'll see. You could even kind of pre-mix the colors first to just test yourself and make sure that you're not using anything that doesn't have, you know, that influence of the red into it. Okay, so a little more crimson and cooling it off a little bit with some white.